So today is the 13th of November 2017, and this is Rod Slater interviewing George Salmond. Now, George is a well-known figure in Watson's. He arrived here in 1995 and became head of the junior school in 2016. But we'll talk about all that during the course of this. George, tell us a wee bit about your childhood and early education. You're not from Edinburgh, are you?
I'm not from Edinburgh,
No.
as the accent probably gives away. I had a fabulous childhood, born and brought up in Arbroath, looked after by my parents, one younger brother, John, 3 years my younger, and all the memories I have are extremely happy ones, very loving, caring family. I went to Timmergreen's Primary School in Arbroath and then on to Arbroath High School, and again the memories that I care to remember of school are all very happy ones, and indeed I would say that probably my experiences at school then impacted on me wanting at a later stage to become a teacher myself.
Did you decide at that point you wanted to be a teacher, or did that come later?
I can almost remember leaving primary school and thinking that I want to come back into this environment, and as soon as I went into senior school, a primary school teacher is what I wanted to do, and certainly I've got absolutely no regrets, far from it, but there's always part of me thinks, well, what if I had just had a slightly wider scope and hadn't sort of gone down that very sort of straight route. But I suppose that gave me a determination and a focus as well, which was very important because there were lots of distractions as well along the way. Yeah,
but tell us, sports played a huge role in your life, even at school as well?
At school as well. I always say to the pupils at assemblies early on in the year here how envious I am of the opportunities at Watson's, not least the extracurricular clubs that we have, because at the time when I was going through school there was teacher strike in Scotland.
Of course. Yeah.
And again, I say to the children, unfortunately that didn't mean to say that the teachers were out during the school day, it was just that it impacted on clubs.
Extracurricular clubs, yeah.
So from primary 5 through to my S6, there were no or very few school clubs as such.
Oh, right.
Albeit there was a support for learning teacher at the primary school who did cricket, and that certainly got me hooked. But it wasn't until my S6 that I represented Arbroath High School at football or at cricket, for example.
Right. Because there weren't the opportunities that you... And did you go straight into the college, or did you do other stuff in between school and studying?
I had a year out. I went to New Zealand for the Scottish winter to play and to coach cricket, and that was fabulous. But just before going, I met the late and great Jim Cowan at a cricket match. He brought some Watson's pupils along to watch the game, and president of the Scottish Cricket Union at that time was John Everett, again a former Watsonian, and he introduced me to Jim Cowan, who had seen in the programme that I had recently qualified as a primary school teacher. He got me into the school to have it certainly wasn't an interview with Mr. Gerstenberg, it was more a chat, something like this. And at that chat I was offered a job starting a year hence in the junior school. There was no formal interview as such, there was no observation of me teaching, so it was a very different time.
But to be talent spotted by Jim Cowan, that's a pretty safe recommendation.
Well, as we've seen, his reputation goes before him. Certainly I've not looked back. It's been a fabulous journey with Watson's.
So you were offered the job, and did you take it up straight away, or?
I went to New Zealand. I was asked to keep in touch during the year, but of course social media and emails really weren't the thing in those days. So it was letters and a card at Christmas to Mr. Gerstenberg just to say, don't forget about me.
Yeah.
And when I came back in May, I remember coming in for a day with Kath Grandison and observing a day in her classroom, meeting some of my soon-to-be colleagues, and then making the move to the big smoke, as it was, compared to Arbroath, and starting in the August.
Yes. And before that, when you left school, where did you train?
I went to Northern College
in Aberdeen.
In Dundee.
Oh, Dundee, right.
We had 2 campuses, one in Dundee, one in Aberdeen, and did the 4-year Bachelor of Education degree course there. And again, thoroughly enjoyed that, going into the local school, some of them in Arbroath, and indeed going into my old primary school as well, as so many students, speak about going in and seeing the old faces and finding out some secrets about them along the way.
Were you ever in any difficult schools, in deprived areas and so on? Did you?
There were a couple of schools that I had placements in Dundee, and without naming them, it just put a completely different perspective on the role of a class teacher, in as much as we're more than educators of curricular areas. There's an education about life, there's a role modelling. There was so much more in the way of social work almost being done by these teachers, and whether or not homework was done really wasn't important. The fact that children were turning up to school, were clean, or even had breakfast, in many situations that was a bonus, if all of those things were true. And it certainly gave a different perspective to the role of a classroom teacher.
Yeah. And now you arrived at Watson's as a class teacher, and what were your first impressions? I mean, what class was it, for example? Do you remember?
I do. I remember primary 5. I started back in '95. I do remember my thoughts before starting at Watson's, because, of course, my interaction with Watson's before being offered a job here was through cricket. And playing against some Watsonians, or playing across at Marside, and of course the aura of Watson's and this big posh school compared to certainly my upbringing in Arbroath. I was very much in awe of the place. Yes, and to a certain extent still am. It's such an
scary place, isn't it?
It's such an incredible place. And that never ceases to amaze me, 20 odd years later, just how wonderful a school and institution Watson's is. But I do remember coming and meeting my first class, and very quickly realising that school children are school children, wherever they are. The one thing that, and I would say that this has been absolutely true all the way through, the one thing that has been really quite striking is the support that you get from the parental body, that maybe the schools I was mentioning in Dundee, therein lay the difference. The partnership we have with the parents at the school is something which I think is really quite special.
Yes. Sometimes it's said that maybe in private schools the parents have too much influence, but I've never found that at Watson's myself. I found that they were supportive without being interfering.
I would say that's true as well. And of course, with the hundreds of parents that we have here, you're going to have a spectrum of that there. But in the main, very supportive, and indeed, when we have our differences, the one thing that we always have in common is that we're doing everything with the children's best interests at heart, and we may be coming at it from different angles, but it's really up to the adults to take that step back and think, okay, what's the collective approach here?
So before we talk more about Watson's, the word cricket has come up quite a lot. Tell us about your own interest in cricket and your career, illustrious career in cricket and everything. Tell us.
My father was a big cricket supporter. So we grew up from early years, and I've got some black and white photographs. They are from the early 70s. of the family playing cricket in parks and in gardens. So he instilled a love of the game and the disciplines around the game, and indeed it was taken up by Chris Plomer, the teacher I mentioned previously. And basically from the age of about 8 or 9, I was playing cricket at the Arbroath United Cricket Club, and spent summers there, morning, noon and night, just loving the game. And was fortunate enough at aged 15, 16 to play in Scotland youth teams. And then progressed through to the under-19s and then into the Scotland B team, and in 1990 made my debut for the full team against India through at Titwood in Glasgow.
Do you have any memories of that first match then? Did you?
Yes. Unfortunately, I can't hide a less than illustrious start. I was out first ball in my first game.
In your first game for Scotland? We'd never heard that before. I remember all cricket in Scotland was cancelled on this Saturday to allow as many club cricketers to go along and watch the game. So there was a 5,000 or 6,000 crowd on a beautiful day in Glasgow. And out steps young George Salmond.
Out I come. I remember the toss of the coin. Kapil Dev, the captain of India, won the toss, and there was a big cheer went up. Everybody thinking that India would bat first, and he decided to ask Scotland to bat first. And I was batting number 4, and when I went out to bat, there was one ball of the over left. At the non-strikers end was Gordon Greenidge, famous West Indian cricketer who was playing in Scotland's overseas professional. And I remember thinking, I've got one ball to block out here, and then I'm going to go and speak to this legend of the game. What a story to tell my grandchildren or Watsonians in years to come. But of course there was that one ball to negotiate. And I got a little inside edge and was caught close in, and for a moment everything just went silent and the world stood still, and I had to put my head between my legs and walk off. But fortunately the team had been picked for the next game before that. So it was down at Lord's of all places, and I managed to get a 50 in that game and feel a little bit better about myself.
So you went from one extreme to the other.
Yes.
And how many caps did you get for Scotland altogether?
I was very fortunate in that just about the time when I started playing, Scotland started to get many more games than previous generations had had. So there are some very well-known Scottish cricketers who played longer than I did but didn't have as many opportunities. So by the time I retired in 2001, I had 146 caps and had the opportunity to travel to some fantastic places in the world to play with and against some of the really top names of that generation. And cricket really, I've got an awful lot to thank cricket for, not least the fact that I'm sitting here today.
Well, yes. And when did you stop? When did you get your last cap?
We qualified in 1997 in Malaysia for the 1999 World Cup in England. So that was a real highlight to captain Scotland at this, on the world stage. And indeed, we also qualified at the same time for the Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur in 1998. We then had to go to Canada in 2001 to go through the qualification process for the next World Cup in 2003, but we fell at the final hurdle, the top 3 teams to go through, and we finished 4th.
Oh dear, that's so close.
And at that time the coach retired, and there was a new coach coming in, and I felt that it was only right that the new coach, he may well have made that decision for me, but it was only right that the new coach had the chance to start with almost a clean sheet of paper. And I gave up the captaincy certainly, and actually gave up playing competitively too at a reasonably sort of young age of 31.
Oh yeah.
But I had been at it almost full time and juggling a job for the best part of 12 or 13 years. And again, it gave me an opportunity to really concentrate on school life.
Yeah. What was the attitude of school when you had to take time off?
School was, Watsons were fantastic. They really were. Donald McGugan, who was the head teacher at the time, was very supportive, and I can only thank colleagues as well who picked up classes and covered me for sometimes 3 or 4 weeks if we were off on tours. It was a very exciting time, but I always had that debt of gratitude to the school.
So you would expect maybe after a career like that you would have become a cricket umpire, but in fact you became a football referee.
Yes.
How did you get into that?
Well, probably got school to thank for that as well.
As well.
But when I joined Watsons, I'd grown up playing cricket and football as my winter sport. But when I moved to Watsons, there was a rugby match on a Saturday morning to referee, and I thoroughly enjoyed the run around on the rugby pitch. Yeah. But if I'm being honest, I had no idea what was going on, other than that the ball went backwards.
Yeah, yes, that's
and I remember qualifying as a rugby referee, and the letter came through from the SRU to say that you now qualified to referee up to something like National League Division 4 or 5.
Right.
I thought, there's no way I'm refereeing senior rugby.
No.
But then got speaking to some friends back in Arbroath who said, well, why don't you do the football refereeing? Because I did enjoy the physical runaround on the pitch, and thought that I had a better understanding of what was going on, and could maybe empathise a bit more with the footballer than the rugby player. So again, went through that, qualified as a referee, went through the sort of grounding, doing youth matches, and then sort of the junior matches in Scotland before in 2007 becoming a Category 1 referee.
Yeah. And so what did that involve?
So that involved, there was one night of training a week in Edinburgh after school. We were given polar heart rate watches and had to download all our training to the fitness experts at Hampden, and then obviously there were Saturday or Sunday fixtures that I would go off and referee after doing the boys rugby on a Saturday morning. So
sometimes you do boys rugby in the morning and then you'd be off to a football match in the afternoon?
Most of the time I would.
Yes.
The only time that was different was if I, for example, maybe if the game was in Stranraer or Elgin, a colleague would maybe double up and allow me to go off and do that. But I'd always try to repay so that if I had a game maybe in Fife or closer to home, I could maybe do a double header on a Saturday morning myself.
Yeah. And did you really enjoy that? Was it stressful? Did you feel that you were under pressure from the crowd at all? Or
yes.
How did you deal with that?
I don't think I ever felt that it was stressful. It was certainly something that, as you were building up to a big game, which invariably was every game, because for those players it's the biggest game in Scotland on Saturday. The anticipation was probably worse than actually when you blew the whistle and you went into auto drive at 3 o'clock. And having refereed at some of the top grounds in Scotland, Hampden, Celtic Park, to full houses, and also gone to places like Montrose or Cowdenbeath where it's 100 or 200. Quite often these places, and Arbroath. These grounds were often harder to referee at because you could hear every individual shout.
Yeah, it's not just a big roar.
White noise. And indeed, some friends in Arbroath made sure that it wasn't an easy ride for me.
They give you a hard time for this.
Probably quite rightly too.
Yeah. Did you find it easier to control professional footballers rather than the Watsons kids?
No. No, ultimately there was always a phone call to the children's parents that would usually help in that regard, but I think footballers are a special breed, and invariably the discussions with them, you know, when you turn up at 1:30, whether or not the previous game with them had gone well or not, in their eyes, you know, it would be perfectly hospitable and really good. But there was something about the white line and the whistle at 3:00 that would turn perfectly sane and reasonable individuals into, you know, certainly the Jekyll and Hyde.
Is that right?
Metaphors, very true.
Yeah, you became the enemy then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's very difficult to try and reason with them.
Mm-hmm. What about the introduction of video technology into football? You know, as in rugby, are you in favour of that?
Do you know, that's something that I've had dilemmas about, because if I go back to that grounding I got from my own father, he very much was of the opinion that the referee or the umpire's word was final.
Yes.
And I can remember having one or two extremely stern conversations from my dad, you know, depending on how I'd reacted to an umpiring decision, and even a shrug of the shoulders, or, you know, a 2 or 3 second delay before leaving, having been given out, you know, he would pick up on that. And there was always part of me that thought, well, you know, it's sport is a metaphor for life, and, you know, you have to deal with these things. And indeed, some of the best conversations that you can have after a football, rugby or cricket match are to analyse the referee's performance and decisions. And if we become so sterilised that, you know, everything is right or wrong, part of the beauty of the game goes. But I suppose over time I've become more convinced by the fact that, in having refereed, that if for the sake of a few seconds, you know, a mistake, a clear mistake, can be clarified and the correct decision be made, then why would you not embrace with technology? And I do very much think that football is lagging behind other sports, rugby, cricket, that use this relatively well, relatively quickly, and could certainly stop some of my now colleague referees getting it in the neck on a Sunday morning.
So how long did you continue with that level, at that level of refereeing?
So I continued to the end of the 2015-2016 season, and my penultimate game was a cup final, the Petrofac Cup final at Hampden, which was Peterhead against Rangers, 50,000 live on BBC Alba, and that game was a lovely way to almost sign off. My final game actually being Hibs at home to Queen of the South, and I did think, you know, Easter Road, having started my first game at Elgin, I thought Easter Road's a really nice venue to finish off at, and it coincided with being appointed as head of the junior school on an acting basis, and albeit I was always able to do the deputy head's role and referee as well, without there being a conflict of time or commitment there. I didn't want to have any sort of clouding of the waters, and threw my hat in fully with the acting role.
So here you are now, head of the junior school, but you've had different roles in the primary, in the junior school over the years. What were these various stages that you went through? Post of responsibility and so on.
Again, luck plays a great deal, a big part in it, because just when I felt that I needed maybe a new challenge professionally, opportunities have come along within the junior school, and one of those was a restructure with the leadership team, which saw year group leaders being appointed within each of the year groups in the junior school, and I was one of the first year group leaders to be appointed in primary 7, and I did that role for a number of years before being appointed as assistant head teacher when Ben Dean left to go to Australia. And I did that role again for a year and a half before it became deputy head teacher, and I was deputy head under Linda Fleming for a number of years, and then Catherine Jack, my predecessor as head, before being fortunate enough to be appointed in the acting role as head.
Yes, and then the real thing.
And then the real thing, about a year ago now. So,
yes.
Christmas 2016, it was given substantively to me.
Just give us a wee sample of all the different activities you've been involved in over the years, all the different trips you've been on and sports.
It's the beauty of the school, I think.
Yeah.
You know, we have the 8:30 to 3:15 aspect of the job, which is brilliant, but actually you don't get to know the children and the staff until you go away and you have a trip with them. And I've been fortunate that I've gone on Munich trips with Primary 7 and S1. I've gone to York, to Doonans, to Broomlea, to Meagle, to London visits.
Yeah.
I've done basketball, cross country, rugby, hockey this year with the Primary 6s, cricket.
Oh yes, yes.
It's fabulous to get involved, for the children to see you in a different light as well, I think, and I'm sure there are many other trips and activities that I've forgotten. This year I'm hoping to go on projects for a week. I've never gone on an S3 project, but
that's terrific.
I think it would be very wrong of me to have a career at Watson's and never to have sampled. So I've thrown my hat in to say that I'm keen to do a week. The second week coincides with the Primary 7 show, which I don't want to miss.
Oh yeah,
but,
yes.
A week at projects would be something very special.
Oh yeah, and you'd see some of the kids you'd known younger, and here they are as adolescent third years. Actually, they're great on projects. I love projects. All of my
building all that resilience.
Yeah. Were the pressures different in the classroom? Has it become much more prescribed as the curriculum you do in the classroom? Do you have to follow the guidelines much more strictly than you used to?
I think the beauty of Watson's is that there is a curriculum in Scotland that is almost there as a guideline, but we can pick and choose, we can cherry pick.
Oh, God.
And I think it's something that we are wrestling with, if I'm being really honest, because we don't want to be so prescriptive that either the pupils or the staff feel that they're in any way restrained, because we've got fabulous teachers in this school, and we really want them to use their personalities to really bring the children along and to almost run with the children, the children giving us the guidance as to where they go next in their learning. Yeah.
What would be the ideal Watson's pupil that comes out of the junior school? What would you like to see them? How would you like to see them equipped for the next stage? Because there's so many different sorts of people, obviously.
Yeah. There's a confidence that I think that we always want to see in a Watson's pupil, and not always an overt confidence, but just that inner strength that they're prepared for the world beyond Watson's. And I think giving them as many opportunities to engage with the local community and indeed the wider community helps with that. But somebody who's equipped for the global demands of life beyond their S6, whether that is somebody who is going to go off and be a politician, or somebody who's going to set up their own business, or go off in a vocational career, all of these, absolutely we want to embrace all the opportunities that we can afford the pupils, and hopefully they look back on their time at Watson's as being an extremely positive experience for them, because I think if the pupils embrace everything that is on offer here at Watson's, then that more often than not is the case.
Yeah. What would you like to see as future developments? I know there is a plan, and it affects the primary school, particularly in terms of building and so on at the moment. Speak about that first. What's on the cards?
The principal has a master plan.
Yeah.
And I was delighted when the junior school was phase 1 of that master plan.
So what's going to happen there then?
Within the next 12 to 18 months we hope to have a substantial extension put on to the upper primary, which in effect will see 5 new classrooms being built, a reconfiguration of our library space, the 2 music classrooms from the lower primary coming in to give us a performing suite, and music rooms in the upper primary building. We will take in a brand new primary 6 class, as well as the primary 7 class that's new. In the lower primary we're going to reconfigure spaces there as well, that will see the nursery class currently in New Myerside House coming into the lower primary building, along with a brand new nursery class as well, giving us 4 classes at the nursery stage. It's extremely exciting. Along with that, we hope to do substantial work to the outdoor space in the junior school as well, playground and sort of some of the green areas around there as well, so that the children have every opportunity to enhance their outdoor learning experience as well as that inside the building too. It's a really exciting time to be involved with the junior school, because these plans look fabulous.
With Edinburgh Rugby now based at Myerside for their matches, how does that affect you?
Probably in 2 ways. One answer could be quite quick to say that actually on a day-to-day basis we have noticed very little impact. However, I'm quite sure that the parents at pick-up and drop-off time on match days, or the build-up to match days, will have a different experience of that. But we've been chiming very well with Edinburgh Rugby and communicating well with them about that. We're really hoping that there will be opportunities for pupils going forward, not just the rugby playing pupils to engage with coaching staff, but for the non-rugby playing pupils. We've had meetings with Edinburgh Rugby to see what we can do to give them opportunities to, in terms of hospitality, marketing, so that other aspects of the curriculum, we can maybe use their expertise to bounce off.
I would like to see them replace the pitch with a hybrid pitch, so that all your pupils can go out and play there at lunchtime and so on the big pitch. Do you think that would happen?
That would be a fantastic thing to happen. It would give us an opportunity to be down there. The children would really enjoy that, which is important too. And I suppose it would be a little bit easier to maintain for the ground staff as well. So here you've spoken about now the sort of physical plant of the school. Have you got what vision have you for the way you'd like to see the primary school develop? I think whatever that vision is, what's critical is that all of these developments that we have, integral to Watson's is the ethos, is the school motto, and we want to always be true to that. That's something that has struck me since joining in '95, going to various dinners or school functions where you meet former pupils. There's a spine to Watson's that will remain, I hope, forever very true to that. And of course, the school physically looks different in many ways, different pupils, different size, but we must maintain that ethos and be true to who we are. I was given the opportunity at half term just past to go and travel around and look at schools around the world with a view to magpieing best practice and seeing what was going on. And what struck me was there's so much of what we do at Watson's that is very good. But of course there are other very good schools out there that are doing things slightly differently in a different context, a different culture. But there are 1 or 2 ideas I've come back with that hopefully...
So you're mulling over them at the moment?
Hopefully we'll come to... We can't come back and change everything in place.
That's right, next week.
But it's some very quick fixes, I think, that we could do, but some very interesting approaches to various aspects of school life that I think would work in our context too. Oh
well, I think we've covered almost everything. I can't think of anything more that we can add to this, except to wish you all success and fulfilment in the rest of your career, which I hope will be in Watson's.
Thank you.
Yes. And I think the school are very lucky to have had your services over the years and in this new role in the future.
That's kind of you to say, Rod, but certainly the pleasure has been all mine.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.